Lost Silver by author unknown. You see, I am a simple college student living alone in an apartment. I was very enthusiastic about the release of Pokémon Heart Gold and Soul Silver here in the States. I have purposely locked myself out of all media and the internet outside of school purposes. That means no 4chan, no /v/, no Bulbapedia, etc. As I was busy with the school year, being poor at the time, I wasn't able to buy Soul Silver on its launch date. After my school year ended, I ordered Soul Silver on Amazon. However, it would take a week for it to arrive. I decided that during that time, I would replay my Crystal version on my Game Boy Color. However, I realized that long ago my mom threw it away because I told her the save went dead and I was very upset about it then. She also threw away my Silver version. So, all I have is my Game Boy Color. As such, I set out to GameStop and bought a used Silver version, as it's the only Pokemon game they have left for Game Boy Color. $10, fairly cheap. I went home and started it up for a nostalgia trip. However, that's where things started getting bizarre, and most likely the reason why you're reading this. The Game Freak logo started up as normal, but just froze there. I thought the cart was just errored or something, so I turned it on and off, and the same thing happened. I tried pressing A and start over and over in all of the buttons. Eventually, the logo vanished, and there was a black screen for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, rather than going to the usual menu screen, I was already in the game, in a previous save file, which was odd. I was expecting all of these carts to be wiped by the poor battery. Either way, I wasn't complaining, as I would have chosen the continue option to see what the previous guy did anyways. First off, I checked his trainer information. His name was just ... He didn't have much originality. I checked his profile, and apparently he had 999 hours and 99 minutes logged into the game, with all 16 badges and 9,999 Pokédollars, and all 251 Pokemon in the Pokedex. Seeing as he apparently had Mew and Celebi logged also, I'm guessing he either used a Game Genie or was a really hardcore Pokemon player. I checked his Pokemon to see what a badass team he has. To my surprise, I saw 5 unknowns and a 6th Pokemon named Hurry. I'm thinking that this must have been a cruel joke by the person who last played the game, but I decided to check the profiles of those Pokemon anyways. As expected, they all spelled different letters of unknown, all level 5. I was a bit shaky with my unknown alphabet at the time, but I identified the word spelled out to be L E A V E, leave. As for the 6th Pokemon, it turned out to be a Cyndaquil. Mind you, this was before there were individualized Pokemon icons. The Cyndaquil looked normal, but it was level 5 with only 1 HP left, with only 2 attacks, Leer and Flash. I don't know why they named him Hurry, but at the time, I just disregarded it. The most eerie thing was that despite my volume being at maxed, none of the Pokemon made their usual cries, just pure silence. Having enough of the team, I closed it. I was parked at what appears to be a room inside Bellsprout Tower. However, for some reason, there were no NPCs around. Even more eerie was that the pillar in the middle didn't move at all, as if it was just leaning on its side. There was no music at all, and there was no exit or ladder, or at least I thought there wasn't. I walked around for a few minutes, but can't seem to find a way out. This was certainly not a room I've seen in the Bellsprout Tower before. I tried checking my items for an escape rope, but the bag was completely empty. I finally managed to find a ladder, which turned out to be behind the pillar. The screen turned black, and the music finally started playing. I had a sudden chill, as I recognized the melody I heard to be the theme you hear when you listen to the radio in the ruins of Alf, where the unknown are at. I immediately realized that it wasn't a loading transition, but rather I was in a dark room and would need flash. Before I took care of that, though, I immediately checked my Pokegear to change the radio to something more pleasant, but it turns out that there was no radio card, nor even a phone nor time card. There was only a map card, in which Gold, from earlier, I will call him Gold from now on, was just walking in the midst of black. I recall that Cyndaquil has Flash, so I turned off my Pokegear and made Cyndaquil use Flash. I didn't see any message saying hurry used Flash or anything like that. The room just became lit, just like that, and I soon regretted it, as the room was a chilling blood red with a linear gray path heading south. The ladder I used to go up and down was not there either. I had no choice but to head south. The screen got darker every 20 steps I made, until I finally made it to the end, which appears to be a sign. I read the sign, which said, "Turn back now." Suddenly, I was asked to answer yes or no, but there was no question asked. I chose yes, as I do not know what it was asking, and the screen went black again, making a ladder climb to sound. The unknown radio music stopped, and in a few seconds was replaced with the not-so-creepy Pokeflute music. I was in another dark room, but I held my breath and used Flash again. Suddenly, it said that Hurry has fainted, which was odd since I recall there was no status conditions like poison on him, and I clearly wasn't in a battle. I checked my Pokemon quickly, and suddenly he's no longer in my party. In fact, after a bit of investigating, none of my Pokemon were there, but instead all replaced with level 10 Unknown. I did the same thing as before, and spelled out the Unknown. My then team of Unknowns spelled H-E-D-I-E-D. He died. Either way, after that creepy change, the room was lit to reveal myself in a very small room that appears to be only 4 squares big. The walls of said room were gray bricks, as if I was inside something that was hollowed out. Outside the rooms appears to be a bunch of graves, similar to the ones found in Pokemon Red and Blue. I've walked around that small room and pressed A, but nothing happened. I've already concluded that this was clearly a hacked game that some sadistic person sold to GameStop. However, my curiosity kept me going. I checked the trainer profile of ... again, only to find that the sprite of Gold was missing his arms. He also seemed to appear less smug, but rather sad and empty in a way that I do not know how to describe. For some reason, it also said he now has 24 badges, which was clearly impossible. After a few minutes of aimless wandering, my character suddenly spun and did the escape rope spinning animation. Instead of flying up, though, my character spun downward slowly, as if sinking. After that screen, the music stopped. After finally landing, the overworld sprite of Gold was colored differently now. Instead of the usual red skin he dons, he appears to be completely white now, including his skin. It's as if he was taken straight from the colorless Game Boy games and placed into a colored background of the Game Boy Color. I checked his profile, and now, while he is as white as his overworld sprite, he lost his legs and has what appears to be bloody tears from his eyes. It also says he now has 32 badges, which now starts to disturb me as this change in number seems to represent something important. I also checked my Pokemon, which this time contains 5 Unknowns and a level 100 Celebi without a nickname. The Unknown are this time leveled 15 and spelled out D-Y-I-N-G, dying. I checked the Celebi's profile. It was a shiny Celebi, except there's only half of a sprite, 1 leg, 1 arm, 1 eye, and only 1 attack. Perish Song. The area I was in itself was the Bellsprout Tower, with the immobile pillar as before. Except everything was apparently red now. I walked north for what felt like forever. Eventually, I finally encountered some generic men and women NPCs. They were all lined up to the side and facing the long, slantish pillar in the middle. They were also white, and nothing happens when I try to speak to them. I kept going north until the pillar finally appears chopped off, with a transparent red in the spot. I went up to red, and without even pressing A, I was suddenly engaged, and finally, in a battle. The music starts again, which it sounds like the unknown radio music again, but played backwards. Gold's battle back sprite matches his front one with the bloody eyes, white skin, lack of arms, while Red sprite was the same as before in Gold Silver Crystal, except transparent. The text simply said, "Wants to battle," as if he has no name, and both of us only have one Pokemon each, which is weird as I swore I had 6 with the unknowns. Red sent out a seemingly normal male Pikachu, except he was level 255, and his sprite seems to be sad and had tears in his eyes. My shiny Celebi came out, conveniently with half a sprite for the back sprite also. The shiny noise and animation were different, as the sounds it made sound like multiple screech attacks used consecutively. However, rather than the usual fight, item, Pokemon, run menu, I was only given the option to use attacks. Since Celebi has only one, I chose it. Naturally, since Pikachu was level 255, he went first. Pikachu used Curse, lowering its speed and increasing its other stats. I'm not even sure Pikachu could even use Curse. Celebi used Perish Song. In 3 turns, both Pokemon get KO'd. Not like I have a choice. At this point, it didn't even go back to the fight menu, as the battle just continued without me. Pikachu used Flail, which doesn't do much damage despite his level boost and his health being at maxed. Also, note that there was no animations at all for some reason. Celebi used Perish Song. Nothing happens, as it was already used. Pikachu used Frustration, which did a shit ton of damage, knocking Celebi down to less than 10 HP. Celebi used Pain Split, which surprised me, as Celebi didn't even have that attack in the first place. Now Celebi and Pikachu have about 150 HP each. Pikachu used Mean Look, not like that did anything. As expected, due to the effects of Perish Song, my Celebi fainted, except in the text it said, "Celebi has died." Instead of the ordinary drop off the screen animation, the Celebi sprite just vanished. For some reason, the Pikachu was still up, even with Perish Song, and it didn't even count as my loss. Pikachu used one more different attack beyond the 5 attack limit. Pikachu used Destiny Bond. Afterwards, it said Pikachu has died, with a slow fade out animation. Apparently, I was the winner, as the transparent red sprite showed up and said. At that point, I just freaked out, as the transparent red sprite suddenly became beheaded, leaving nothing but his transparent body. The battle had ended at that point, and faded out along with the music. I'm back in the overworld, with another change to Gold sprite. He's now as transparent as Red's overworld sprite. I quickly checked Gold's profile, where this time, the only thing that remains of him is his head, with transparent skin. The head was zoomed in a bit, showing the black void in his eyes. It now stated that he has 40 badges. I then backed out and checked my Pokemon. They were all level 20 shiny unknown, which spelt out N-O-M-O-R-E. No more. I was at what I now know is next to the end. There was apparently no music playing, but for some reason I still felt like there was something that could be heard. I was back in my room in New Barktown. Maybe, finally, I get to play this game properly, but who am I kidding? I knew that sadistic person must have done something. I walked, quote unquote, around my room to interact with things, as I'm a bit afraid to go down the stairs to see what awaited me down there. Note, I said walked, as while the background was moving, Gold was not moving his transparent limbs at all, doing so. Just floating like those ghosts you see in Diamond and Pearl. As expected, the radio, computer, and TV did not work, so I had no choice but to go down the stairs. I ended up in the same lower room of my house. Everything appears normal, except Mom isn't home. After failing to interact with anything in this room, I decided to go outside. To my surprise, the door leading outside at the south didn't work, and instead, I just walked straight through it into a void. I continued walking south to see what the heck was going on. My house vanishes as I head south into the void. It was creepy, as when I entered the void, the outline on Gold's transparent sprite turned white to contrast with the pitch black. Eventually, I reached a white area, and Gold's black sprite turned transparent again. I continued south without thinking of stopping at all. After a long trek south, I finally encountered something. It was Gold's regular sprite. I talked to it, and he said, "Goodbye forever," and vanished. As that happened, it said use nightmare, which at that point I would not deny that being possible. Gold did another escape rope animation, spinning slowly downwards like before. I'm now back in the small hollowed out room, surrounded by graves earlier. Or at least I say I was back there, as there was no sprite left. I tried to walk around, but nothing moved. Not even wall bumping noise. I checked my trainer profile, with absolutely no gold sprite left. It now said I have 0 badges, and all the pictures of the Johto gym leaders at the bottom were replaced with skulls. I checked my Pokémon, which were all level 25 unknown. As expected, it spelt out a phrase I dared to read. I am D E A D. I'm dead. As soon as I went back to the overworld, the room I was supposedly in was then covered with the same blocks as the walls. I then figured out what exactly that room was when the final text said R.I.P. Rest in peace. That room was a big grave, surrounded by other graves. Gold has already been dead. He presumably died a few years after beating Red. He was a young trainer who, despite his efforts in collecting so many badges and attempts of becoming a Pokémon master, was still unable to avoid the inevitable fate of death, and his efforts were forgotten by the next generation. I was unable to escape that text no matter what I pressed. I tried resetting the game, but the same thing happened, at which I finally decided to give up on that horrible nightmare. After that experience, I will never look at the gimmick, unknown, the same way again. They say that only the first generation have folk tales and legends, but the second generation have shown me how unpleasant the truth can really be. I eventually enjoyed Soul Silver immensely, but I still couldn't unthink what that rigged game had taught me.